All right, hello everyone. This is Scott McNamara, the host of What's New in Adaptive Physical Education. It's been a while again. I'm in my dissertation right now and starting to get really deep into that, and so I apologize for how long I've been. But my dissertation is actually looking at the effectiveness of podcasts on people's perceptions and knowledge, trying to help our field a little bit. So I apologize, as well as I do have a podcast sitting kind of in the archives waiting to fix up some of the audio quality. So hopefully I'll have another one out for us soon. So this podcast is a concept one. I haven't done one like this before. And I took a look at the Minnesota APE conference, which is going on kind of as we speak right now from today until this Sunday or Saturday, I believe. And they have a really, really strong leadership, and they have a really strong state conference. And I wanted to share some of that to you all. There are other state conferences like California's and Texas's and North Carolina, but I think there's a lot of states that lack it, as well as lack some of that leadership. And there's a lot of that going on in Minnesota, and I wanted to share some of that with you. So this first episode is going to be on some attendees of the conference, and then also with some leadership staff. And then the next one will be with the two keynote speakers, Laura Brickhouse and Dr. Susanna Dillon. And my hope is that this inspires you all to go out and to go to APE-specific professional development conferences, as well as maybe thinking about joining leadership or making your own if there isn't one already. So with that, we're going to start with some of the DAPE attendees and talk to them about what their experiences are and why they keep coming back. I believe you all just kind of want to give your experiences of being a part of DAPE and attending some of the conferences and what that's done to you as professionals.
I'm part of the leadership committee now, so I'm part of the reporting on the conference for the last 3 or 4 years. So I can kind of speak to the ins and outs of it and the history of it a little bit. But I really want to get their experience of what makes them come back every year? What sets our DAPE conference out from other conferences, whether it be a MinShape conference or Shape America or whatever? What sets us out? What types of things do you take back from the conference? What's the most useful things? Those are the kind of the questions and thoughts that I kind of had.
I attended my first DAPE conference. It was in the fall of 2013. I was with some other undergrad, future DAPE teachers in undergrad, and then the rest of the grad students with Dr. Garth Tyneson and Dr. Manny Felix. And it was really an experience because it was unlike we had gone in undergrad to I went to my undergrad in Wisconsin, and I had gone to the Wisconsin, state conference, and this one was different because it was going to be an overnight stay at a camp. And so when they were talking about things to bring, and you have to bring sleeping bag and pillows and stuff like that, I thought that was pretty unique, and I don't know, pretty much up all of our alley, because we're oh, it's for camping and we could stay in log cabins and stuff. So I thought that was cool, and a little bit different and it's different than a hotel. So I went. And it was, it's always tough to go to those conferences, when you're still in school, because you can't, take those things, literally the next day and go and use them. You kind of just have to, store them in a folder and then say, oh, one day that would be cool if I had my own class. Or you can't even picture the kinds of students that you have because you don't have them yet, So I remember just sitting there thinking, as a grad student, I was wow, this is great, but I'm probably going to forget all this, And so it's you try to take notes and pictures and do the best you can, but then I remember, so then I got my first teaching job here in Faribault, and I couldn't go. I shouldn't say I couldn't go, but I didn't feel good about, because the conference is so early in September, or early in the school year, that I didn't feel like I could leave my students or get a sub. I didn't even know the procedure to get a sub at that point, and so I didn't go my first year, which I wish I would have, but then I came back the second and then the third year. And I guess what keeps making me go back is just that it's a really more personal, like intimate conference. I feel like where you're able to like go up and talk to the presenters like right away, and they'll have conversations with you, and you're not in this huge like conference center. And now I can actually use the things that I am like what we learned. Like I can go and use it like the next week in class, that kind of stuff. So I just keep coming back because number one, it's in a beautiful area up in Annandale. Like that's I think a hook right there for me at least. And then like two, I just feel like it's specifically date oriented, like just kind of like date stuff. And so that sometimes at the bigger conferences, like you just get bits and pieces, but this one's, I don't know, I feel like I can just use right away. And then also like I recognize, you know, as you network more and more, like you recognize people. And like UW La Crosse alumni, there's like everyone's kind of like UW La Crosse, so it's like always fun to talk to people, network in that way. So
okay, definitely. So just a lot of it echoes kind of what Holly said. First, just that it's specific to Dave. You go to some of those conferences and it's always great stuff, but it's always kind of geared towards more of that general education, where that Dave conference. Presenters are really great about giving you ideas for all different types of students, regardless of their ability. I would also say Annandale is awesome. I haven't stayed over, but I think I might this year. I just sent in my registration application today. And, you know, just like Holly said, the networking is great. It's great. This will be my third year, hopefully, of going back to MnDape and seeing those same faces. And like she said, just taking what you learn and being able to apply it right away and brushing up. It's really nice that it's early in the year. In Minnesota, like with what Holly said, it was a little nerve-wracking. I took the jump and went my first year and got us up, but it let me have a great just a bunch of different ideas right off the bat of things that I could implement over the course of the year. And MnDape has been great in getting presenters. There's always great people. Rich Burke, Sue Tarr. I know we had the Dave Teacher of the Year, Greg Bushaitis, I think.
Bushaitis was there. And then this year we're going to have Laura Brickhouse, who won the National this year. She's going to present 3 different times, so that'll be really exciting as well.
Yep, and Mike Doyle's always there, and he's awesome. So getting to kind of know those like superstars in the field is really cool too, because like you follow them on Twitter and you kind of see things that they tweet or they talk about, but then like Holly said, everybody's really approachable. So getting up there and like picking their brain after a session is awesome.
Can you guys talk a little bit more about specific things? Like I've heard like a theme about that you have things that you can apply like the next day. Can you give like a few examples of that?
Yeah, I'll start giving an example. One of the things that myself and the other coach here, Allison, she really founded it is in Minnesota, we have to track a lot of our goals and objectives. And the one thing that she kind of brought to MnDape a couple years ago was Google Forms. Because it was always a thing of, when I started teaching 12 years ago, was keeping all your stuff in a binder and writing it down, and how do you have time to do that, and multiple buildings and tracking all that. To now where I use my iPad and Google Forms to track all the data, for our goals and objectives. And Allison and I are going to do another kind of a make it, take it with that with people. And I've really brought that back to our district and pushed it with not only myself, but even the case managers and the OTs and the PTs. This is a great way to share the data, because then when you go to your IEP meeting and you're talking about skipping, you can show the percentages, like this is how close they are to mature form. You can see right here they have 3 of the 5 elements, 70% of the time, and it's just instant data. I can just pull it up. You don't have to look for that binder. Did I leave it at the middle school? I got it all, on our Google Drive. That's one of the things that in the last probably 3 or 4 years I've really transitioned over to personally. And, like I said, Allison and I are going to do a little conference on that, helping people make it take it the next level. You have it, what to do. What's the next level for you?
Sure. I think I agree with the Google Forms thing, and kind of how she went through each step by step, like next, like how to set it up in Google Forms and kind of how you want it for your goals and then your objectives. I'm trying to think, like, I'm looking around my office, and there was this one sheet, I can't remember, it might have been, like, last year, and it might have been Greg's presentation where he had pictures of, like, the warm-ups that he did,
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about? It's got pictures on it, and he had, like,
he had a warm-up routine of then, and so I took that, too, and used that in my room a lot, too.
Yeah, and so the things that I think from the conference specifically is like that. It's like that picture or that quick little like thing that I can just see, and then just like that very next day, I remember I used like a ball around the head. I don't know if it's like visual and like written, as far as like the warm up goes, and I can take that right there and then incorporate it into like my warm up that I kind of already do, So it's more. I feel like I take the things that I can supplement. Like I don't totally like do like replace this. It's like I just kind of like add on to kind of what I'm already doing, and so I have a lot of handouts. Trying to think of. And John had mentioned too the thing about like Twitter and the social media piece is nice because once you get a hold of their name, then you can like follow them, and then I'll like retweet an activity, and then in hopes that I can come back to it soon. If I can get it in time or whatever. But I feel like too any type of like website that they give, or sometimes if they play like a song, I'll like write that down and I'll download that song. Because sometimes it's hard to find like school appropriate songs. This day and age as far as that goes, or like I don't know, fast paced songs or any song.
So for me, some of the big things that I have brought back, just ideas on how to like modify equipment or games. Those are probably some of the big ones, like different ways people use like everyday things that you'd find laying around your office or your school to make those modifications. Like for an example, one was like those bands that everybody hands out, like the Livestrong bands. Just like a student who doesn't have a good grip, you just slide one of those around the wrist, and then you put a paddle or a racket in it. So just like easy, quick things like that are always great to take away from a conference. Pete had in his session, I was actually in that session where he presented on technology and using Google Forms. Just different apps that people use is always great too. Like Exercise Buddy is an awesome one. I don't know if I got that from like in Dave or a different conference, but other music apps like Holly mentioned, those are always big things as takeaways too, and just the opportunity to converse, with other people and pick their brains for sure.
All right, so that was the first piece with the DAPE attendees talking about their experience and why they go. Now we're going to transition. We're going to focus a little bit on the leadership piece of it. And I have Michael Doyle, who's used to be the president of Minnesota's AFERD, their SHAPE. And he's been very influential in many advocacy pieces and is very well known. And he's been with the conference and the leadership for 8 years now. I also have Jennifer Hebink here, and she's a newer member of the team, and they're going to talk about their experience and why they did what they did. So I want to know a few things about leadership in APE in Minnesota. I want to know kind of why you started in there, and then I also I want to know exactly what your role is.
For I want to say 6 or 7 years. And it just happened to me where I would attend all of our region meetings for Region 11 in the Twin Cities and attended them after a while. And pretty soon someone who was on the board representing Region 11 got a different job and had to leave. So, it was one of those things. Hey, Mike, you seem to come to a lot of these meetings. You're pretty heavily involved. Would you be interested in being on the leadership committee? And I said, of course I would. And it was very exciting because just to be able to go to these meetings and hang around with these people who care about adapted physical education so much. It's really motivating, to be with these groups of people at all these different conferences and workshops, and you just learn a lot from these people. I mean, everything I've been doing the last couple of years is definitely stuff that I've learned at these conferences and workshops throughout the state of Minnesota.
Very cool. And Jen, why did you get involved in this?
I got involved, well, they asked me to come on, kind of like the same way Mike does. Like, I go to everything. I just get really involved. I actually go to the Region 11 meetings, even though I'm in representing 5 and 7 because we haven't had a meeting in a while. So it's just, I just feel like they pour into me so much. This leadership team has just supported me so much. And this is my 8th year of teaching, and so I think ever since I first started as a DAPE teacher, they just saw me, and we love new teachers. We take care of new teachers in the adapted Phi-Ed world in Minnesota. We're very strong when it comes to support for other DAPE teachers. We call it DAPE in Minnesota sometimes. But I think that's why I got involved, because I just felt like I'm with my people. We have the same passion. We have the same drive to do what's best for kids and meet them in their physical activity and fitness for life. So I guess that's kind of why I got involved. I feel like everybody on this team has more experience than me and has more, I see them as being really awesome teachers, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to take what I learned back to my region. So that's kind of why I got involved.
Very cool. So I am interested in this for a number of reasons, and because not every state has a APE leadership committee. I think it's starting to get a little bit more prominent. I know California, Texas, North Carolina has one, but where I'm from originally, Michigan, I don't know of any that's there. So I think it's interesting to know why you got involved in the first place with that. Now, with that, what do you all do for APE teachers and for the profession and all those things? What is it that you all are providing in your leadership?
Well, I know one thing we constantly work on is we have a Minnesota Adapted PE Operations Manual, and it was created a long time ago. But one of our agenda items at every single meeting we have is we take time where there's a writing team that meets at the meetings, and their main focus is to keep this operation manual totally up to date. And it covers everything from starting out at assessment to moving on to service delivery to moving on to writing goals, writing objectives, all the right things you need for a quality IEP. So that's one thing that we keep updating is this operations manual. And I think the other big one is the professional development opportunities.
It's huge.
We do have a workshop every spring, and our goal of this workshop is to move it around to one of those different 11 regions. We've been doing this workshop for a while, so I think we've actually circled the state of Minnesota and hit all 11 regions, I think twice now. So with 11 regions, that's 22 years. They've gone around twice and circled the whole state, just to give those people the opportunity in the outer parts of the state to receive some professional development strictly dedicated to adapted PE instead of having PE sessions the whole time, because there is some differences once in a while. But everything from that, and in our meeting we try to keep our website up to date with information, so we talk about that at our meeting, and everything from higher ed. We have a representative on our committee, Dr. Sutar, who represents higher ed, so she gives us an update about what undergrads and grad students are going through in the state of Minnesota and how their requirements change. I mean, we had a period a few years ago where the Board of Teaching really wanted to change the requirements for these students to get these undergrad and graduate degrees, and it kind of hurt a lot of colleges. So we've been working hard and getting on committees to make sure that it's just not an overwhelming task in order for a student to receive that degree from a university, because you got to think about the future. You have a lot of teachers retiring, and you got to make sure that you have quality teachers taking their spots when they're retiring. So we're always trying to look ahead to the future. So you're also advocating to universities and such and communicating with them. Wow, that's excellent. So it sounds like you're all doing a lot of different things that are really good. And that manual you talked about, Mike, is one of my favorite pieces of documentation on how to deliver services and assessment and all that stuff in APE. I use that
quite often to look at, because I think it's a lot in there, and it's also given in a very nice way. So, and if it's okay with the committee and all that, I'd love to put it on with my podcast, because I have a little blog with it too, sometimes with supplemental information.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's free on our website. You just go on mindape.org, and it's on the resources tab, and you can find it there. So, yeah,
anyone
please
can
do.
use it. Yeah,
share it.
That's what it's there for.
Is that something that you all do you talk with, like, any legal representation or State Department people on that documentation?
Yeah, we do have. So another representative on our committee is Rich Burke, and he is, he teaches adapted PE, but he has a .2 position at the Department of Education. So he is the liaison between the Department of Education and our adapted PE leadership committee. So that's what he does. He's in there fighting for us, making sure that adapted, like all the administrators around the state of Minnesota are aware of or they are aware, first of all, of the laws about adapted PE and how it's a service that kids age 3 through 21 are required to have if they qualify for it. So it's great that we do have that connection with the Department of Ed, and he's always bringing this operational guide into them and making sure that everybody knows about it and uses it.
Very nice. Yes, no, I love that thing. So with that, so you talked about, what's going on, what you all do. You're preparing for the future as well. Now, something that I also wanted to talk to you about is, I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think that you all are one of the oldest leadership committees in for a state in APE. And I kind of wanted to know the history. With that history, if you know some of it, and I was told that Mike knew some. That's what I was told. I wanted to know a little bit about the history of how you all got started. And with that, with my listeners, because hopefully there's some people around the nation listening to this, and probably some that, kind of like what you said, Mike, earlier, that don't have a lot of people around them, and maybe listen to the podcast because of that, But talking about the history, is it something also to think about how they got started, and maybe how somebody in whatever state that doesn't have it could maybe get started?
So this year is our 42nd adapted PE teacher conference that we've had in the state of Minnesota. I think, I don't know for sure, but we always joke about it here. We think that California has only had theirs going for either 40 or 41 years. We always say that in all of our meetings. We always, for some reason, say in our meetings, ours is 1 year longer than California has had theirs. So we want to call ourselves the longest running adapted PE conference in the state of Minnesota. But from what and talking to some of the people that have been around for a while, it was, I'm 43 years old, so this conference is almost the same age as me, and it's a bunch of really passionate, adapted, back then, just PE teachers back in the early 70s who really, really wanted to make sure that students with disability got all of the equal opportunities and service as their general ed peers, and they just decided to come together and learn from each other. And you hear stories where this conference, 42 years ago, it was just maybe 5 to 10 people meeting in a meeting room at a hotel somewhere, and then eventually it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and people started to find out that, hey, there's people from all over the state that really have this passion for working with these students with disabilities and making sure that they get that equal opportunities as everyone else. And eventually it gets to the point where the group gets larger and larger. They have to move to a bigger site. And then eventually it gets to the point where, it's time for us to really change state law and make sure that students who qualify for this service do receive this service, and the schools are required to give these students the adapted PE service. And eventually it happened. Eventually they got law passed in the state now that if a student between the age of 3 or 21 qualify for the service, that school must provide this service, which a lot of states, I'd say a majority of the states, don't have. And then once that started, then everything took off. And now this conference has moved around to 2 different camps. We used to be at a Camp Courage, which isn't too far from here. But Camp Courage it got too small. I mean, now we're at Camp Friendship, a much larger camp with more cabins and more buildings and more meeting rooms. So now we're able to have more and more sessions, and there's there's time slots where we have 6 different sessions going on at one time about different topics for 1.5 days. And, between 200 and 250 adapted P teachers coming together, it's a pretty cool thing to see that and to learn from all those people and see all that passion.
And Jen, what's it like for you to have that history in the DAPE conference as a newcomer to the board?
I think it's huge because all those original people, I was lucky enough to be taught by them in my college. Sutar was my professor. Don Glover, he's been writing books and being an adapted Phi Ed teacher. He's probably close to 75 years old, and he's still teaching at the university. It's crazy. And so having those people really just do what they do and get after it, that just inspires me to do it as well as they did. So that's kind of me coming on and just going hard after this adapted Phi Ed stuff for kids. So
very nice.
It's really great too. We mentioned the universities, but it's been great to see an uptick, and because I went to the University of Wisconsin La Crosse, and back when I first started coming to this conference 12 years ago, really didn't see UW La Crosse. So I went down to my professor, Garth Tymason, down there that I had in undergrad and grad school, and said, Garth, you got to get these undergrads from La Crosse up to this conference. And Manny Felix, he was my professor at La Crosse, and he was still there. And so probably for many years now, so UW La Crosse has sent up a bunch of students. Manny Felix has moved to Winona State since then, so he's bringing up a bunch of students. UW River Falls brings, and that's where Jen
that's
went.
Where I went.
They bring a ton of undergrads.
Dana Zimmerman teaches there now as well, and he tries to bring as many as he can.
So yeah, like we said, it's all about the future. It's the keeping the future of this profession strong, and it's really great to see all these university students here trying to learn.
But so with that, I am going to say so long as far as the podcast goes, just because this is going to be all kind of a larger concept piece. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, we're doing everything we can up here, and we've run a really good run of having National Teachers of the Year in Adapted P from Shape America. This is our 5th year in a row that we've made sure we've had the winner of the National Adapted P toy, and it's really exciting to see people from all over these parts of the country now coming in and showing new things they're doing. It's been great for the people at this conference.
All right, thanks everyone for listening. We're going to have another episode out in the next 2 weeks with some of the other interviewees. So stay tuned, and I hope everyone who's at the conference enjoys it, as well as thinks about how they might be able to apply some of these things into their own state and own district. All right, take care.